What's up, everybody? It's me, Chris. Honestly, I wasn't even planning on doing this video. Went out last night after seeing the Ortiz fight, so I thought by the time I knew by the time I got home last night I wasn't going to be jumping on the internet, but I thought by this morning, people would have videos up talking about these fights from last night, but surprisingly nobody did. So, might as well talk about them, right? I'm sure some fans would like to, and I know I kind of actually want to talk about them a little bit. First up, Maidana against Victor Ortiz. What a fight, man. 6 rounds, 5 knockdowns. Actually, not even a full 6 rounds. 5 knockdowns and 5 and maybe a quarter of a fight. 5 1/4 rounds. Awesome fight. Started off, with a bang. Ortiz caught Maidana early, knocked him down. Got careless, though, and got caught with a huge, I believe it was a right, and really got buzzed. I mean, Ortiz got dropped flat on his back. It's interesting. I believe Max Kellerman noted it as well. I read earlier this week in a column by Steve Kim, I believe, that rumors had been swirling around the gyms in LA about Ortiz's chin being possibly questionable. And he definitely got nailed there. He got nailed with the clean shot, though, and he did get up and survive the round. But throughout the fight, he was getting hit with a lot of shots, and you could kind of see it taking it out of him. He definitely didn't seem to take punches as well as Maidana, although Maidana did get knocked down more. Anyways, that was an awesome round. The crowd was absolutely on their feet. Pretty good crowd for Ortiz, too. Definitely had a lot of fan support. Second round, Ortiz came out firing, really looking to finish Maidana off. Had 2 knockdowns in that round, including one at the very end of the round. Manuel Stewart actually said it looked like Maidana was ready to quit. How wrong he would be. But yeah, it definitely looked at that point like Ortiz, it was his night and he was going to, just run away with the fight. However, third and fourth rounds come around. Kind of a back and forth. The third and fourth rounds weren't as exciting. There was a lot of holding. Not as many exchanges. The technique of both guys was out the window. Ortiz wasn't really fighting smart. And he was getting hit with a lot of rights. He just was open to that right. And it was, even though, like I said, Maidana went down more, it seemed that Maidana's punches had more on them. Whether he does have a lot of knockouts, he has a huge KO percentage, Maidana that is, or if Ortiz doesn't have the strongest chin, I don't know. Maybe we'll see down the line in these guys' careers. But anyways, on to round 5. It's a pretty good round. There's a really good exchange towards the end of the round. However, Ortiz was cut over the eye from a big punch by Maidana. And then at the very end of the round, he was caught with a huge right hand right across the face, which caused a lot of swelling. In the corner, Ortiz's trainer was telling him, I think I'm going to stop the fight. I'm going to stop the fight. If you don't fight smart, you need to cover up. Telling him what he needs to do. I don't know. I just don't know if that's the best advice to really send your fighter at a time you're thinking about stopping the fight. It's definitely not, a way to instill confidence in your fight. If anything, it's going to instill doubt and possibly fear. Anyhow, Victor Ortiz comes out for the 6th, and he just looked like he knew he was going to lose. Like he just didn't have it. I don't know. I don't want to say he gave up, but it just looked like he was broken. Almost. Maidana just jumped on him in his own corner, Ortiz's own corner, just fired away, was all over Ortiz, chasing the other corner back to the center of the ropes, against the ropes. Ortiz kind of went down from an accumulation of punches, got up, and it almost looked like he was going to turn away to his own corner. But the ref corralled him, took him to the corner where the doctor was, and the doctor stopped it on a cut. But even if he wouldn't have stopped it, that fight was over. Maidana was just going to finish Ortiz off if Ortiz himself wasn't going to stop the fight. It's hard to say. There's kind of conflicting views on how that went. Interesting thing in the after fight, though, post-fight interview, they talked to Maidana first, of course, and they asked him, if he'd like to fight the winner of Kotelnik, who he had a controversial loss to in his only defeat, or Amir Khan, who Kotelnik's scheduled to fight. He said he'd like the Kotelnik fight because he felt he was screwed there, and he said Amir Khan has nothing. So, I don't know if Khan wins against Kotelnik. I don't know if Khan wants to fight Maidana because although Amir Khan is a very fast and skilled fighter, he doesn't have the best of chin, and we saw, if nothing else, Maidana has a lot of power, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. To Victor Ortiz, though, he said, his agent stuff, he shouldn't be getting hit like that, and he didn't mean, just having a bad defense. Maybe he feels he shouldn't be getting hit that much as a person, just in general. And he also said, he didn't want to go out on his back. He didn't want to go out on his shield, so to speak. And that he insinuated he was unsure of his future. Now, I read afterwards, he kind of, Golden Boy representatives De La Hoya and Richard Schaefer were saying, oh, no, he's going to continue on with his career. And I think Ortiz insinuated that as well. But I don't know. Victor Ortiz is a guy that I was really looking forward to seeing. We had a chance to interview him before on the radio show. Is a really likable guy. Seemed to have a bright future, but he reminded me of two of my favorite fighters of recent years, Fernando Vargas and Francisco Panchito Bajado. The difference is both those guys had very different career paths. Panchito Bajado started strong and just didn't seem to have the desire or will to continue when he faced a little bit of adversity. And we saw that in his comeback, or attempted comeback, No disrespect. I'm still a Bajado fan if he ever comes back, but just it wasn't there. Whereas Vargas was willing to go out on his shield, was willing to give everything himself, not even fight the smart fights, but he just did it for himself. He had too much pride for his own good, but he made a lot of fans and a lot of money in the short span of his career. And I was curious to see which path Ortiz would follow. And it appears, unfortunately, like he may be going more towards the Bajado side, for better or worse. It may be better for himself personally, long-term, health-wise, for his personal life. But for boxing fans, especially hardcore Mexican fans that were starting to, Ortiz was starting to gain fans in that realm, which is, the really strong fan base to have. I don't know if he's going to be able to get those fans back, or even if he wants to. So it'll be interesting where his career goes from here, but either way, I'm interested in seeing Ortiz fight. Like I said, he's a good kid, and obviously he's going to put on an exciting fight, win or lose. So, hopefully fans will give him a chance to redeem himself, and hopefully he can redeem himself as well if he wants to. Moving on real quick, Arthur Abraham, KO 10 over Mahir Oral. Mahir Oral. I don't know how to pronounce that. It's German, I believe. Arthur Abraham started slow. The first few rounds, he was kind of getting out jabbed. Oral kind of reminded me of Felix Sturm. Abraham just wasn't really doing anything. Al Bernstein was commentating, I believe, and he said, I believe it was Al Bernstein. I'm not for sure. I may be wrong on that. If I am, apologies. But he said once, Abraham lets his hands go and starts fighting, he'll have success. And that was the case. Come round 4, Abraham really started letting his hands go, knocked Oral down. Oral got up, and from there on out, actually, you know what? Abraham wasn't consistent with his offense. Oral had his moments. He would counter and catch Abraham pretty clean, but the problem is Oral only had like 6 or 10 KOs, so he had no power. So although it would kind of catch Abraham, it didn't really hurt him or give him any reason to back off. And Oral would try to move in with his jab. He was using his length to his advantage, but he just didn't have the firepower to keep Abraham off. So round 6, Abraham got another knockdown. Oral got up. You could tell that Abraham, was going to win this fight from that point on. He just didn't, put the pedal to the metal, so to speak. But in round 10, he went full force, He got 3 knockdowns in that round. Credit to Oral. The guy showed a lot of heart. He got up from every knockdown. Abraham was even looking toward Oral's corner, I believe, like, hey, maybe you guys should think about saving your fighter. And after the 3rd knockdown, that's what happened. Oral's corner did throw in the towel to save their fighter, which is a smart thing to do because, he could have continued, but he was out of that fight mentally and physically, and there's no need in a fighter getting hurt, And, even Abraham, I think, wanted the fight stopped at that point. So Abraham looked pretty good. They asked him if he'd like to fight possibly Giovanni Lorenzo, I believe, next, or Pavlik at 160. He said he wants the big fights. That'd be Pavlik at 160. Hopefully that fight gets made. If not, he said he'd be willing to move it to 168. A lot of big names there. Mikhail Kessler, that's a fight I'd like to see him in. I'd actually think I could probably take Abraham in that fight just based on his strength and aggressiveness. Although it'd be a good fight because Kessler, I think, is a little bit better technically and has a better jab. Carl Froch, that'd be an awesome fight. I'd like to see that fight be a war. I'd probably take Abraham in that fight as well. The thing is, Abraham's not as big as those guys. He's a really strong guy, but I think stature-wise, height-wise, I think he's not as physically big as those guys. But he can overcome that with strength and speed. Plus, he's a good combination matcher, and there's a really good tight defense. Someone reminiscent of Winky Wright, as they noted on the broadcast. Other guys up there like Darrell, Green, Andrade, Ward. I don't know how he'd fare against those guys. I don't know how he'll fare against taller guys with speed advantages and good jabs. I mean, I know he's got the power to take those guys out, but I don't know. They might be able to outspeed him and keep him out. But either way, I think he'd make for a good fight. So I'm looking forward to see what's next for King Arthur, as they call him. Exciting fighter. Very charismatic fighter as well. And he gave a good post-fight interview as well. They asked if there's anyone that could hurt him. Al Bernstein asked him, and he said, my mom. So I thought that was kind of funny. Anyways, that's it for now, guys. I don't even remember what the next fight is, but until then, I'm out of here. Bye.